Good evening. Bear with me 1 second while I was originally going to do this from down on the floor, but in talking to Brian, I realized that probably would be a little bit better view as far as on the live stream by getting in the pulpit. So I'm just going to move this over here. I think it's work out to be a better view that way. But it is the first Sunday of 2026, and I told somebody a lot of times I like to do the Commendation and Concerns lesson the last Sunday of the year, last Sunday night of the year. But of course, a couple different reasons. One, we had several people out of town last Sunday, and I thought about, maybe trying to bump it up and do it earlier, but I got burned with that last year because one of our very first ones that are listed for 2025 are technically 2024 baptisms. In fact, they obeyed the gospel the very night of Commendation and Concern 2024, which was a blessing, but I still give them a hard time about that because they totally messed up my entire year. But so anyway, I just decided I'd go with this on the first Sunday night, and I think it dovetails very, very well with the elders' presentation this morning. So let's go ahead and kind of do our year in review, some commendations, some concerns. I think it's obvious, but we don't have every single commendation, every single concern. There are other commendations we could mention, and relative to the commendations, there are other concerns that we could mention relative to the concerns. And usually I have a section at the end where we talk about challenges. There are other challenges we could give, but I also realize that it kind of grows on me from year to year, and so I try to pick a few different areas, and I don't want to, you could be overwhelmed as well with too many concerns or commendations to the point that it's hard for it to stick. And so I try to pick one or two of each, just a few of each. I had, as I started putting this together for this year, just something that I thought of and came to me. And so I wanted to share this. There's a verse in Psalm 113, verse 3. From the rising of the sun unto the going down of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. Anybody that knows me knows I love to see the beauty of a sunrise or even a sunset. And a couple there from Bremen, a Bremen sunrise, two Bremen sunrises there. Those are both, if I'm not mistaken, from a Sunday morning, not the same Sunday morning, but various Sunday mornings coming in. And usually I manage to get over here before daylight on Sunday mornings. And then the sun sets. You see one in Sevierville. I had to crop that to make it fit, but where we were in the mountain, that was about as best I could get of the sunset anyways, but some of my youngins may remember from when we were up at PTP this year, polishing the pulpit, outside our cabin. We were headed back from, I guess, lessons that afternoon, and we were driving up to the cabin, and we were all just like, wow, this sunset is something else. And so as soon as we got back to the cabin and I tried to take a picture of that, did the best I could with it. And there's one from Carrollton, Georgia, just headed home from, I think, the hockey rink in Peachtree City, if I'm not mistaken. The one on the left, bottom left, was shared with me by Jacob and Julia Stevenson that they took in Port St. Joe. It is Port St. Joe, right? Did I get that right? Okay. And that is one of the more amazing sunsets I have ever seen. And that is something else. But it made me think of that verse in Psalm 113. From the rising of the sun to the going down of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. And may we always be striving in sunrise, sunset, and all the hours of the day in between. Sunrise of life, as we begin our Christian life, to the sunset, to the end of life. be praising the Lord, serving Him, and striving to grow more and more like Jesus. And that's our aim, and that's to a lot of what the elders said this morning as well. Now, births in 2025. I had 2 births, Cain and James Payne, May the 6th, and Magnolia May Bridges, September the 17th. You see some pictures of those little fellows. We welcomed 2 young ones. We've had a year or maybe a couple of years here in the last 3, 4, 5 years where we didn't have any births. So we had 2 this year. That's always exciting to see folks welcome a new baby into the world. So those were our births. And then deaths, we always look back and see the ones that we said, see you later to. We often point out it's not goodbye in that sense, but for a faithful Christian, and Sister Rebecca Wheeler, who left this life March 8th, certainly was a faithful child of God. And I just remember so many times over the years, Sister Rebecca serving in various ways. I remember just one of the memories that stands out to me the most is youth days. Tirelessly working back there, a lot of times with Melanie and others, and just getting everything ready for the young folks. But just a great worker in the kingdom, great family. You see her there. I love that picture with all the kiddos. And then we always, of course, go over new births. There even folks that we know die in the Lord. There's a bit of sadness that we say, see you later. But the positive side is looking at the new births, folks that have been baptized into Christ. Now, you may be looking at that and going, Chad, that date, is that a typo? June the 5th, 2024? It's not. We presented Sister Ava Baker with a baptismal certificate early this year, or what now is last year. And Chris said it this morning. How y'all bear with me, because I don't know. It could be a lot of times during this lesson that I say this year, meaning 25. But we did present her with a baptismal certificate, but they didn't have really a home congregation at that time. Ava went to this camp in, where you at, Ava? Mississippi, right? Tifton. Oh, like south part of Georgia. Okay. So went to this camp. She obeyed the gospel there. And so I was talking to Miss Dana about that. And I said, well, if you'll send me a picture, I said, I'm going to put that in the slideshow for the end of the year, because I just think it's an exciting thing. And it's always a great thing to see someone who is baptized into Christ to become a new creature. So that was June the 5th of 24. But I did want to mention that. And then, of course, Wes and Lindsay, they messed up my whole year. I told Lindsay, I was teasing her the other night. I was talking to them before service started, and I said, well, I hate y'all not going to be in the show, because you're not going to be in the slideshow because it was 2024. And she said, no, I better be there. And she said, better be first. Well, it wasn't first, but I hope that's okay, Lindsay. But I love Wes and Lindsay, and really have. I've told several people, this was December 29th last year, 24, and they had been visiting with us. I didn't have a card with an address for Wes and Lindsay, and so that Sunday morning I saw them again, and so I decided I'm just going to go. In fact, I told one of my kids, I think it was Paisley, I said, you have one job. They said, okay, what is that? And I said, you see that couple back there? They've been visiting? Yeah. I said, don't let them leave. Do not let them leave, because I'm going to get them one of those little cards in the calendar that I send to the visitors, because I don't have an address for them, but I'm just going to give it to them in person. So I did, and Wes starts talking to me. He says, well, we've been thinking about placing membership, and so I said, okay, well, let's sit down this evening. And said, I'll be finishing up my PowerPoint for tonight. I was getting ready to do the Commendation and Concern last year. Let's sit down this evening. And I told Reagan and the kids, like, hey, I'm meeting with this couple, but I'll probably be home for supper and all, because I'm going to set up a study. Well, I thought I was setting up a study. They said we're going to do the study. And I went over the booklets, the 3 booklets, and I said, I also have this kind of a condensed version, this Does It Matter book. They said, okay, well, that's, whatever. I said, well, I'll try to work around y'all's schedule. Y'all just tell me what works for y'all, and we can set this up. And Wes said, well, what's wrong with right now? And I said, well, by this time, it's like it's pushing 9 o'clock. That's fine. And, of course, you see their little cracker snatcher there. I said, he was with him. I said, is little Gabriel going to be okay? They said, yeah, I think he'll be okay. And I'm telling you what, man, he was a champ. I don't know, what was it, Wes? Couple 3 hours. It was a bit. And we went through everything, and they've been attending for some time, so that helped. There was a lot less that we had to cover, but they obeyed the gospel that night, and it was exciting. So that was December 29th of 2024, and I love Wes and Lindsay, and they've just feels in many ways like they've been here forever. Christian Kaiser, January 31st of 2025. Had been studying with Christian for some time. Ashley and her family, they know Christian. Happened to just invite him. He started coming to church. We started studying, and he obeyed the gospel. I've mentioned this not terribly long ago, but just by way of reminder, he is now in, I keep wanting to say Maryland. It's Maine, right? Maine, with Natalie. He was engaged at this time. He has, since they got married, they have welcomed a child into the world, Waylon, and so they're doing well, but they're in Maine, and so I haven't been able to see him in person or her in person for some time, but they are doing well, and certainly hope to be able to get to visit with them in person again before too long. And then at our week, Latin American Missions Emphasis Week, there at Backwoods Christian Camp, Junior Bracknell, June 11th of 2025, he obeyed the gospel. He had been baptized before, but he came and talked to me, and he just said, I don't think I knew what I was doing. I was so young. I think I was kind of thinking more in terms of checking off something. I understand better now, and I want to do this the right way. I want to not just get dunked in the water. I want to be baptized into Christ. And so we took care of that day. And we were all gathering, just about to head back. I think it was getting time for evening worship. And somebody said, we didn't take a picture. So as you can see, Kerry grabbed his camera, and Brent decided to photobomb that picture a little bit. But we had a good time, and that was Junior. And then Sister Skylar Wilson was baptized into Christ by her dad back in their backyard there in the pool on July 12th, 2025. And so that's always wonderful, especially seeing dads getting to baptize their daughter into Christ. Sister Becky Hester was baptized September 23rd of this year, or last year, 2025. I'm going to try to just say numbers to save the confusion. We didn't say a lot about this, and in fact, I asked Sister Becky just to make sure before I even put this in the slideshow, because she's just very low-key, and she doesn't want a lot of attention, but she just told me, she said, I've been thinking about this. I was baptized at a very young age, and she said, there's no way I understood what I was doing. And this has been on my mind, and I need to know that I'm doing this with the understanding of what I'm doing. And so she did. And she came up here, and just a handful of us were there for that. And so that was an exciting day, just right before her gospel meeting in the fall. And then Greg and Blair Harden, October the 16th of 25. They had been visiting with us some, and I tell people, I said, in fact, I think it was maybe Papa I was talking to recently. I said, man, I must have a really, really difficult Bible study coming just not far down the road, because it doesn't get much easier when I was sitting in my office one Tuesday morning, probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and Blair sends me a text, and she says, hey, Chad, I don't really know the best way to go about this, but something's been on my heart. I've been thinking about this a lot. I need to be baptized. And said, how do we go about that? And I said, well, there's some studies that I like to go through with folks just to make sure we everybody understands. People know what they're doing. We're all on the same page with the Bible. So if you just tell me when's a convenient time, we'll get together for that. That's what we did, and it was 2 or 3 studies. They also have been visiting for a while, and they both were baptized into Christ. I said, man, that's, sometimes you're going out and you're knocking doors, or you're trying to develop people's interest, cultivate interest, and then sometimes you're sitting in your office and somebody texts you and says, hey, I need to get right with God. How do I go about that? And so that's a blessing, and they obeyed the gospel there in October. So there are all 9 of those, if you count back to Ava and, of course, Wes and Lindsay. 9 baptisms for what we'll consider as the 2025. And I believe, I meant to go back and count people here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I think, who's missing there? Oh, Becky. And she told me, she said, you don't need to call me up there. She said, I've got the material. She already has the material that we give to folks. And she said, please just know. See, so I respected that request. I said, okay. But yeah, there's 9 people there if you count all those going back a little bit into 2024. Now, those who have placed membership here in the past, or at least these all fall within 2025. Most of these are pretty familiar to, I dare say all of them are familiar to us. But just in case you don't know, I like to help put a face with the names. Jake and Madison Shadricks, this was March 16th of 2025. Logan and Caitlin Webb, along with Lucy, placed membership 8/27/2025. Easy enough for me to remember. That's my birthday. Landon and Tori and Sawyer came to be a part of the church family here, and for Landon to work with the church family. But this was September 21 of 2025. And I say they came to be part of the church family and for Landon to work with the congregation, because I have said this, and I don't know if I've said this lately, but I think even if I have, it's worth repeating. I have told numerous people, numerous preacher friends, others even just out and about in the community, one of the things I love about being here is that sometimes, if congregations are not careful, the preacher gets treated like the help. And it may be everybody else in the congregation is a part of the family, but the preacher, he's the hired hand, and that's not a good situation for the preacher. And sometimes I think that perhaps is why preachers, if they're not careful, can get into looking at it as just a job. But it's not just a job. And the preacher is not just the help. He's not just an employee. He's also a part of that spiritual family. And I tell you, from day one, I've always felt like myself, my family, we are a part of the church family here. Yes, I labor with the church as their preacher. And I love doing that, and I'm happy to do that. But I know I'm also part of the church family. And that to me, that's, as a preacher, that is special. And I appreciate that. And so Landon and Tori and Sawyer came in September to be a part of the family, yes, but also for Landon to work with the congregation here. Mark and Melissa Tullis, October the 12th, 2025, placed membership here. They've been visiting with us for some time, and so I think everybody pretty well knows Mark and Melissa, but if you don't, again, I like to put faces with the names. And then Gabe, Sydney, Emery, Malia, and Zeke. They placed membership here November 16th, 2025. And then according to my records, just 1 week later, Matt, Becky, Kirian, Alex, Josiah, and Michaela Johnson on November the 23rd. So Johnson and Johnson. You knew that joke was coming. I mean, it's just served right up, you got to hit that one. And then, where is Ray? There you are, Ray. You tried to derail my commendation and concern with that December 28th place in membership. I was laughing about that, and I thought, well, it kind of worked out that I put this off for one extra week because Sister Ray Hickson, soon to be Smith, officially placed membership December 28th, last Sunday, of course. And so I had to adjust my new member slide just a little bit, but I made it work. So those are the folks that have placed membership. Ken, you said it this morning, I think 7. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Am I counting that right? I think that's right. 7 individuals or families. So that's a blessing, and several with a number of children. There have been some restorations as well, and so it's been a good year as far as we had a number of folks that were baptized into Christ. We've had some new families place membership, and some new families that from those who have been baptized to some of the new families, people that have just jumped right into the work, and that's awesome. That's just a blessing. Now I'm going to do this as I did last year and hit this first because I don't want to run out of time at the end and just have to blow through it. If I have to hurry through something, at least it'll be slides. But I just want to mention this again. I don't want to overload us, but just a couple of things to think in terms of commendation. There's been growth, and I meant to move that down to the next sub point, but anyway, these are not all under congregational growth necessarily. But there's been growth in the form of baptisms, new families that have come in and placed membership, and Chris mentioned it this morning. I think it was Chris that mentioned at least a couple of families that are driving, and some that have been here for several years that they drive a decent distance. But they do it because they love the church family here, and they feel like there is a reason. It's not just, it's one thing if you live right next door to the church building. Well, you just go there because it's convenient. If somebody's driving, and I've been there as when I wasn't preaching full time, where I would sometimes drive past a building or a few buildings that were not unsound biblically congregations, but they just weren't the fit for me and my family that another congregation was. And so that to me is a commendation. That's an area of commendation. We've seen it in those baptisms, we've seen it in the new families, but there's also spiritual growth. Some of that may be in a collective way, but a lot of times that's it with individuals. And it may not be that it certainly is not going to be the case that every single individual has grown. Some maybe even, if we look and we're honest with ourselves, say, I've kind of gone back the other way, and maybe that's something I need to work on. But there are a lot of times when we see it. We see growth in individuals in various ways, and that is truly a blessing as well, and that's worthy of commendation. Of 8 baptisms, should be 9 there, over half, 5 of them from evangelistic efforts, and other studies that we have, by the way, are currently ongoing. The folks that are studying to become Christians, to obey the gospel of Christ. But 5 out of 9 that are from evangelistic efforts. And it's not to say the others aren't important, but when you have people that are brought up by Christian parents, we hope, and I think it's fair to say expect, that they're going to obey the gospel at some point. But our evangelistic efforts, we're looking outside, and we want to keep seeing our young folks when they come of age, when they come to that age of understanding, accountability, we sometimes say, see them obey the gospel. But we also want to see those outreach efforts continue to reach folks, because as Chris said this morning, there are people that are interested. And we sometimes we have to find them. Like I said, sometimes you're sitting in your office and you get a text from somebody that wants to study. But sometimes we go out and we have to develop contacts and cultivate interests and so on. But they're out there. And so that's good. And again, we have some that are ongoing. Somebody mentioned to me that I was talking to somebody, and just read a little bit of this. Some I'll condense, but mentioned we have great Wednesday night attendance. And so I put that on here. Our Wednesday attendance, it has been, especially here in the last little bit, it's been very good. And I put there kids galore. We have some parents bringing young'uns. We have grandparents that bring young'uns. Sometimes it's friends of somebody bringing their kids. That's wonderful. And man, the kids' classes are buzzing on Wednesdays. And so that was mentioned. We have great Wednesday night attendance. Again, reading from this text that was sent. With many children being brought in or being brought by grandparents or someone who is friends with a child's parents. Also a close-knit ladies' class that many work hard not to miss. And the auditorium classes on Proverbs, which is a good midweek study that offers encouragement and wisdom on basic Christian living. And boy, that teacher, isn't he something else? Now, I was paraphrasing a little bit on the last there, but the text there was just mentioning that, hey, Wednesday nights have been good, and I've noticed that, and I think that's an area of commendation. And we have a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on. We have a lot of behind-the-scenes workers. There are people that you may not even know what they do. I could tell you, Joyce and I especially probably could tell folks, just, kind of go down a list of this person did this person did that, and a lot of folks, probably half, three-quarters or more of the congregation would go, oh, I didn't even know they were doing that. And that's exactly what we're talking about, behind-the-scenes work, behind-the-scenes workers. Giving is good. Chris went over that this morning. We always want to stay on top of that, but Bremen has typically, for many years now, at least all the years I've been associated with Bremen, good giving. A congregation that gives very well, and that's a blessing. That's worthy of commendation. Our food preparation, somebody mentioned this to me, but I believe it might have been today even, talking about food preparation for funerals and things like that. Bremen steps up, man, in a big way. And we saw it 2 or 3 times when we hosted families here recently. That is an area where it's worth bragging on the congregation. And then concern just a couple of areas here before we get into looking at our year in pictures. Concerns, and again, not exhaustive, and I'll close with just a few challenges at the very, very end. But I always say we need to keep remembering the priority of spiritual versus secular. The challenge of Matthew 6:33, seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And it becomes a challenge, having been 13 years and going into, now in the 14th year, I see this where it becomes especially a challenge as kids get to the age, they start getting more involved, more serious about sports. Do I let that take priority over spiritual matters? And do we put the sports, and it could be anything else, recreational, but a lot of times that's where I see that happen sometimes with families, is when the kids start getting more involved, more serious with the sports. But do we let that, whatever it is, do we let that begin to take priority over spiritual things? We have a gospel meeting this week, but we got this going on. Well, what do we do? What's going to take priority? And it's easy. It's easy to let the secular thing get bumped than to put God in second place. And if we put God, his church, in second place, we might as well just bump them right on down to the end. Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And understand the influence. If I do give priority to the secular things, understand the influence that's going to have on me. It's going to have on my family. But also, it's going to have an influence on others. Obviously, my own kids, they're going to see that, and that's going to... I've again, doing this several years, whether it's here or other places, I've seen where people their children are grown and gone. And you start talking to them, and you find out the children aren't faithful. And I've had some parents just come out and tell me. I've had some, even since being here, but especially in another place that I'm thinking of, where I had parents just tell me with tears in their eyes, when our kids were in school, we did not put spiritual matters first. If there was a sporting event going on for them, they went to that. instead of the gospel meeting. They went to that instead of the VBS. They went to that instead of whatever. And we got older, and my spouse and I, we got more serious about our spirituality, but the kids are gone. And now when I try to talk to my kids about it, they say, why is this all of a sudden so important to you, Mom? Why does this matter to you so much now, Dad? Why are you obsessed and bugging me about this? We were all growing up. You were taking us to this, and now all of a sudden you're trying to give me a hard time about it. And I mean, the tears, those are gut-wrenching conversations that I've had with folks. And I try to say to myself, oh boy, take heed. Listen up, because that is important. And it does have an influence. And then the other thing I'll mention here is Sunday evening attendance. This is a commendation, but it's also a concern, because I could look at probably 20, 30, 40, 50 other congregations, compare our Sunday evening attendance to our Sunday morning, and even like percentage-wise, and say, man, isn't that awesome? But you and I know, it's kind of like I've had sometimes talking about modesty or something like that, somebody say to me, well, I mean, I'm a lot more modest than all the other girls at school or all the other people at school. But you and I know that's not the standard, is it? And so I don't want to look at, well, how are we comparing to other congregations? Because Jesus doesn't say, hey, compare yourself to these other congregations, and as long as you're beating them by this X increment or that increment, you're good. And so we want to try to do better. But so don't get me wrong, it is a commendation, and I think that's worth mentioning. But it is something that we, comparatively, we can do better. Ken had this slide this morning, but you just see some numbers there, and just a couple things that I was going to mention from this, not to just repeat what he talked about, but main thing is, I keep forgetting I can do this from up here. See if I can get it to work now. There we go. It's down here. You see the difference, 2024, 2025, and that's pretty. Again, I think there's some commendation there, because our Sunday class average is the same as 24. Sunday AM, we're down, but we're down by 2. And that's going based on averages. Same thing Sunday evening, except it's down by 1. Wednesday is even. We're even as far as averages. But I also was looking at this, the high and low attendance, and I thought that was interesting. And I don't mind sharing the graphic. If anybody wants a copy of that, I won't spend a lot of time on it, because I could spend a lot of time just breaking that down. Our highest Sunday AM, second row here, 204. Do you see the date under there may be pretty small for some of you folks, middle toward the back, whatever. It's 16th of February 16th. And I think that's a commendation, because our second highest Sunday morning attendance was 20. I forgot to change my slides. 203. That was Easter Sunday. So February 16th, we had more that Sunday morning than on Easter Sunday. And so that's an area of commendation. So there's some interesting things like that. When our highest Sunday evening, that what is it, 226? Well, that was our area-wide youth devotional. So that can be kind of deceptive if we don't realize that. And then the second highest Sunday evening total was our fall festival trunks or treats. But then you go beyond that, and that's the reason I went first, second, and third highest. 162. But that wasn't, in fact, that was pretty recently. No, that was Wednesday, sorry. 152. That was the 26th of January. So just some interesting things there. The highest Wednesday number was VBS, but other than that, those are just nothing special going on those Wednesdays. The August one obviously is summer series, but 12th of November, that's pretty recent. The 162, that's our third highest Wednesday. The lowest we ever got, Sunday class, Sunday AM, Sunday class 85, Sunday AM 119. That was Memorial Day weekend when everybody just kind of, I think, like 5 of us got left out of the memo, and everybody else was like, we're going on a Memorial Day trip or something. But we always have a lot of folks that travel that weekend, so there's no surprise there. But interesting stuff, and like I said, I could spend a lot of time on that, so I'm going to just move on before I get too deep into that, go down that rabbit hole. But that's, to me, it was interesting to look and see, okay, what are the highs, what are the lows, and looking at the averages and things like that, and you see the averages, you know, we averaged 76% of those who were present for Sunday morning, on any given Sunday morning, about 76%, pushing 77, were there for class. About 70, pushing 73% were there Sunday evening, and pushing 80% Wednesday. So again, Wednesday area of commendation, Sunday night needing a little bit of work. All right, so let's look at some highlights from the year. I always just throw my summer series flyer and some gospel meeting flyers here just to kind of knock those out, although I think I'd maybe have something for each one of the meetings. But summer series, those run throughout the summer, so I just put that flyer there. We looked at great Bible chapters. And I try to take these events just in order. And so that's what I'm going to do here. Ladies, game night, January 24th. See a number of ladies that came out for that, and this is one of those areas of commendation as people are growing, spending more time with each other, growing closer to one another as sisters, in that case, also brethren, and other events. The Men's Day was February 1st with Brad Harrell. We had an excellent Men's Day. We're looking forward to another good one just right around the corner this February with Matt Wallen. Then we had a cleanup day, and I thought surely for a little bit we must have, I thought we might have lost somebody, because if you were within reach of Ethan or Connie on that day, you might have been headed to that roll-off dumpster. I mean, they were in cleanup mode, and if hoarders need not apply, because they were clean, and man, there was so much stuff. I mean, you could see bottom right picture there. That roll-off dumpster was packed, and stuff that was sitting outside, because later on, I know I got down in there a little bit. Avi and I got down in there, and maybe Noah and maybe some others were trying to kind of dismantle some of the bigger things that were in there so they would not take up so much space and cramped down, smashed down some so we could get more stuff in there. But man, what a cleanup day we had. We got rid of a whole lot of stuff, and it was a lot of cleaning up going on. Some of us stopped here for a moment to take a little break, and somebody took that picture, but not everybody that helped out that day is in that picture, because some people came, helped a little bit, and then they had to go, and some people came a little bit later and helped. Some people were working even just while this picture was taken, but there were a lot of people involved in that. A lot of people pitched in to help out. That was February 8th. Our spring gospel meeting, I mainly show this slide. I already had the flyer put up in a previous slide, but I mainly show this just to say it was mentioned this morning. I think Ken mentioned it about the cookouts and inviting people. This turned out, this was the day before the meeting started, March 8th, and was, I think, maybe one of the first ones. Might have done one of these last year, but it really, we had visitors that came to several events this year who they stopped by and they got a burger, they got a hot dog, or they got both, and they were invited to services and they came. So we found a way to generate some contact, some interest, and Ethan or Michael or somebody, we were talking about this at one point, and they made a good point, and I think it is worth mentioning. You know, sometimes you could be out and you're door knocking, and you might tell somebody, and they might show some interest, and they say, yeah, you know what, I might come now. Now, where is that? And especially if you're new and you're not familiar with the area, it's like, well, I mean, you're looking at 650 Alabama Avenue. That's where it is. And people are looking for, like, well, is that next to the old Ford dealership? And you're like, I don't know. Maybe. Sometimes people still say that to me, and I'm not. That hadn't been a Ford dealership since I've lived here, and I've been here going on 14 years. So, but if they stop in and get a burger or a hot dog, You know what, I think I might come. There's no worries that they don't know where it is or they're going to mistake it for this church or that church. They've been in the parking lot. They know exactly where you are. So I thought that was kind of a good point as well, and that's neat. Ladies' Day, March 15th. Had a good Ladies' Day, and you can see that bottom right picture. A number of ladies from here and from other places came out for that, and Miss Sherry Harris came and spoke for that. Some more pictures from that. And you see down, I think I had one on the other slide too, didn't I? Yeah, bottom right there, Jimmy and Jacob, and then here, Steve, Chris, and Robert and David. These guys that pitched in to help prepare lunch, right? Isn't that what y'all were doing there? Or were y'all just here trying to hear a lesson? I'm just kidding. David didn't quite know how to answer that. That was a joke. But they came and they helped out preparing lunch and doing that for the ladies, because a lot of times the ladies will help prepare for the breakfast and send food for the men's day breakfast. Lads to Leaders. Here's some pictures of these young folks, I think maybe working on one of their events, one of the multimedia events that they were getting ready to do. There's the group picture at convention. This was April 17th through the 20th. And there's always a whole lot of pictures that I could choose from for Lads to Leaders, and I try to balance getting a number of these with not having too many. Here's you got different folks hanging around and sometimes getting some pictures outside, maybe going to eat or something like that. And there's something I was looking for here. Well, if I could find it. There's a lot, like I said, a lot of pictures get taken at Lads to Leaders. There it is. This is technically from the slideshow. Johnny always shows us a slideshow of kind of people, some of their awards and things like that. But it was kind of neat that the kids had Johnny come up, and I think maybe asked if anybody had participated in Lads. Anybody that was here, is that right? Mackenzie, I think you were kind of running that, right? You did good with that. But they basically said, hey, if anybody's done Lads to Leaders, come up here. And of course, Johnny's done this for 29 years, and so it was just a neat little tribute and thanks to Johnny for many years of working with the Bremen Lads to Leaders kids. And then May 18th, we honored our 2025 graduates. We had 4 high school graduates, Mackenzie, Rachel, Grayson, and Noah. And then, of course, we had our 3 college graduates as well. And so it was an opportunity to, especially for our high school graduates, but we did have Ashton Blank, Ron Adecora, and Jake Rutledge graduating from college. So we honored our graduates, and there you see we always present Bibles to our high school graduates, and we started doing the AP Defender Study Bible, which is a great study resource. There was a youth lock-in May the 30th. This was over at Lake Wedowee. And so some of them came dragging in May 31st, some of the adults and young folks. I don't know how they did it, but some of them went to the lock-in, and then they came to the spring picnic on May 31st. And as always, our spring picnic was a lot of fun, and I think Miss Deborah does a lot of these pictures, and always does a really good job with this. And I'll say, while I'm scrolling through these pictures, I will give my thanks to Sister Joyce, who helps me put together. If I had to put together all these pictures on my own, it would take so long, or else we'd have like 2 pictures. And so I'm very thankful to Joyce for helping with this. Miss Tammy brought her cotton candy maker, and it was a hit. A lot of folks lined up, and they were standing in line to work with that, make the cotton candy, eat the cotton candy. I'll stand in line to eat it, but it was a neat thing. Good Samaritans had a work day on June the 8th. You can see they're working on some books for Camp Negahi. I think those are it might be songbooks or rule books, staff handbooks maybe, something like that they did to help out with Camp Negahi. And then the Backwoods Christian Camp Latin American Missions Emphasis Week, June 8th through the 13th. We've done this for 2 years now. We have an emphasis on evangelism, and I don't ever remember to take a whole lot of pictures, but I did find a few of those to share there. But you can see that house, that's what we call the old house there in the top left. It's I want to say it's actually more like maybe more toward early 1800s. It's an old house, and it's been in the Rice family. I think it was maybe Brent's great-great-granddad that built it with his bare hands, and hey man, those people were made different. I mean, you built a house that long ago that's still standing. That's impressive. And then of course, Camp Negahi always starts the third Sunday in June, Father's Day weekend or Father's Day Sunday, and ran June 15th through the 20th. You see the lineup there that we've done that for several years. I like that picture with the reflection. And we had, I guess, another full session, right? Just a full session of camp there, Johnny's Week, which is, you didn't direct this year though, right? It was, you did this past year. Okay. And so I know Johnny's been looking at transitioning from that at some point, and so, but Johnny's done that for 30 years, right? Because if I could find it, and I didn't even realize it had been that long, Johnny, and I ran across, I was looking for a couple of, I think I had a particular picture in mind that I was looking for, and I ran across this post from Victoria, and also an Instagram post there, and I did not realize it had been 30 years. That is something. Who's that little fella down there in the bottom? That is something else. So I like that. And if you get a chance, go to it's on the Camp Negahi page, and you can see that post. I know it's impossible to read that tiny print, but you can see that post. There's a video there as well, tribute, and so it's very, very well done. So Camp Negahi is always a big event for Bremen and Bremen youth. East Tennessee Bible Camp was July 14th through the 19th, and you see our Bremen crew was Campbell's and Dollahites this year. We had a lot of folks that were planning to go, and they had other trips or just couldn't make it or whatever. And so we had Bremen folks were the Campbells. Well, Corey kind of photobombed there, my niece. But the rest, you see the rest of us, Dollahites and Campbells. And then that bottom right picture is just after Joel and I, who co-direct the camp, they talked us into going down that water slide thing. And it was fun, but once was enough. Well, I think I ended up going twice, but it was under duress. And then Vacation Bible School, always a huge event at Bremen. We always have such a just banner turnout. And I mean, Chris mentioned this morning, some people get the idea of the church as a cruise ship where we just sit back and we get served and we take it easy, but encouraging us to think of the church as a battleship where it's all hands on deck. Well, I'm telling you, we all have times and areas where we can do better. And some folks maybe don't get involved even with Vacation Bible School as much as they should, but I'm telling you, it feels like, at least, at VBS time, that it's all hands on deck. I mean, there are a lot of people. Chris says a lot. I like this expression. I don't know that I've ever heard this before I came to Bremen. It looks like somebody kicked over an anthill. And, I think about that when I was a kid, and you kick over an anthill, and those things are just, they're everywhere, and they're just going crazy. And that's kind of how it feels around VBS time here. Just so many people running around doing so many different things, pitching in so many different ways. We had the day before VBS started, I guess this would be the Saturday before VBS started, the cookout, inviting people. We had a number of people that came to VBS from that. In fact, several people that I'd talk to, and I'd get to talking to them, and they'd say, yeah, I came by yesterday and had a burger, and I was talking to Michael, I was talking to Ethan or Mike or whoever, and they invited me. And you see the big lion, mouth thing there that, man, that itself is pretty impressive. But, I mean, so many different people pitched in. Teachers always go all out with their classrooms, and VBS, as the elders mentioned to me when I first came and talked to them about the work in 2012, they told me, they said, VBS is a very big deal here. And, boy, I remember after that first year, I thought, you ain't kidding. And it's always been that way, and it's one reason why we have such good support from our community and the church and our VBS. A lot of people get involved in a lot of different ways. Some, again, behind the scenes, they don't want the credit, they don't want recognition, they just want it to get done. But then there are folks that step up and they teach. There are folks that step up and do this, that, and the other. So many different things, so many different people. It's wonderful. I mentioned this. They've given the report, and so I don't have very many pictures. There are a lot of other pictures because, Miranda. And Miranda, I went to look for a few pictures, and I was like, wow, there are so many pictures. But they did their report, and so I won't repeat all that. But I did want to just mention, as I go through the year, the group that they went on this Yes To campaign to Peru. But if you want to get on Miranda's Facebook, you could just about document every step of that trip, because I almost always forget to take pictures, and so I'm on that end of the spectrum. But like Miranda, she's like Nikki, Dave and Nikki. A lot of times I'll go to Central America with them, and they're on the other end, or at least Nikki is. So many pictures, and so it helps me out if I ever forget to take pictures of something. I'm like, I can go look, ask Nikki, ask Miranda. The youth went on a whitewater rafting trip July 26th. I only found just one picture from that, but they had a good group that went on that trip. July 27th, you got the graduate send-off. The Good Samaritans went shopping for them to get them some things to take with them and sent them off. And I don't know if this is like a mistake or if this is like a passive-aggressive swipe at your sibling. But do y'all see this? Class of 30. I don't know. Is somebody planning ahead? I just had to give somebody a hard time about that. I'm just going to move on, Bella. The area-wide youth devotional. The Good Samaritans, they had a really, really nice send-off, as they always do for our college kids, and it's been very much appreciated having a kid who graduated. We appreciate that very much. The area-wide youth devo was September 14th. That's when we had our, as I mentioned, our highest Sunday evening attendance. Reagan Amos came and spoke for that. We had people from, I don't know how many different congregations, but a lot of folks came for that, and I was looking just to grab a screenshot or two to put into the slideshow, and man, the singing. If you want to encourage yourself, just go back and listen to some of the singing from that night. Boy, it was tremendous. Praveen visited September 21st through the 25th, and I just had to put these slides up because one day we were taking the kids to the rink to do hockey, and he said, "Hey, I'll go. I want to go." And so he went, and it wasn't too long before he stepped out on the rink. It's a roller rink. It's not ice. So he stepped out there, and Joshua said, before long I see him step out there, and he's kind of like, so okay. And a little bit, Joshua asked him, he said, I think a puck came over there or something. He says, "Do you have that puck?" He said, "What? The puck? The puck. Do you have that puck?" And Praveen he reaches back and he gets his wallet out. And he says, "How much?" And he says, "Not bucks, pucks." He said, "Oh, okay." And so next thing you know, he gets out there and he's like, because I took an extra stick because I thought he might want to try as well. He did. You can see there. He got out there and he shot a couple times and he scored him a goal, got a couple in the net. But I also put this up there just to show you that middle picture. That's Praveen right there. That is a picture of Praveen. I mean, that encapsulates him because he's carrying my bag. and my stick. I went with the boys. I took my gear. I skated with them. And when we got done, we were going to the car. He got my bag. And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "No, I'll get it." I said, "You're not carrying my stinking bag. Give it here." No. And he would not have it any other way. He tried to carry it from the vehicle up there to the rink, and I got it first, but he beat me to it there. But that's just the humility and the servant mentality of Praveen. And so I told him, I said, "I'm going to put you in the slideshow so we can laugh at you playing hockey out there." But also, just like I said, that is a picture of Praveen. And then September 19th, the Olsons moved in, and there were a number of men that met out there. And, of course, Landon's dad also joined us, and we all pitched in, tried to help unload that truck. And it took, I don't know, an hour or so. I bet Landon would say it's a lot easier, a lot quicker unloading it than it was loading it. That's how it goes, isn't it? But we had a good fellowship and good time doing that. And then just 2 days later, September 21st, we had a little fellowship welcoming Tori and Landon and Sawyer. And you see the little cookie cake that they made for them. Good Samaritans, I think, kind of pitched in and put this together. And so that was a neat thing as well. And then our fall meeting, you see our door knocking team there, September 27th. Fall meeting was September 28th through the 2nd of October. The youth had a bonfire devo October 18th out at the Wilson's property, and had a good number come out for that. That night, the ladies had a game night, and so they had a good number for that as well. We had folks all over the place that night. Graham McDonald came October 19th, reported, and I had to put this in here just because we had this picture of Graham, and I told somebody, I said, "Man, I could just listen to him talk all day." I love the accent, and he's just such a good guy and such an easy person to talk to and get along with. And then our fall festival, kind of a fall festival carnival. We had to move it inside, kind of almost day of. And again, a lot of folks pitched in to make this go off just seamlessly. You would never know. I don't think anybody would have known if they didn't know it beforehand. I don't think anybody would have guessed, like, oh, something must have changed with the plans all of a sudden. It looked like it was just always planned to be inside, and it was just pulled off virtually without a hitch. And a lot of folks pitched in, helped with that. Wes and Lindsay kind of took the reins on this, but a lot of folks pitched in to help out, and as always, we got a lot of good pictures from this event as well. A lot of interesting costumes and ideas that folks always come up with. I love just to see the different things that people come up with, especially the Winnie the Pooh and Piglet there. That was one of the more creative rooms downstairs, and costumes and outfits. A lot of different folks participated in that and helped out with that. You see the face painting and all that and then there's even some of the adults. Ladies' Thanksgiving lunch, November the 8th. As you can see here, a number of ladies came for that. Had a good crowd for that event. And then the youth Friendsgiving at the Underwood's house. That was at y'all's house, right, Michael? That was November the 15th. Had a good number of youth go to that. I told Landon, I said, I thought I was nearly done with this thing when I finished like some of these November events, but Landon's had a lot of stuff going with the young folks already. But the Good Samaritans did their grateful, thankful dinner, grateful and thankful that they've done several different times. That was on November the 24th. They'll honor someone we're grateful for, we're thankful for, and that's a really neat thing. I really like that concept, and so they did that again this year, November 24th. A number of them participated in that. Shopping for the Haralson County Nursing and Rehab Facility, where they had kind of an adopt-a-resident program, and you can see this lady about center of the slide. Landon said they didn't give a name, but he saw when they had posted some pictures, and he said, I knew that's what we had bought for a female resident, and so we knew, but he didn't see a picture for the male. We bought something for a male resident, but it may just be they didn't have those pictures posted. But anyway, it was a neat thing and a good idea that Landon had of something to do as kind of a service project with the youth. So they shopped for a resident. And then the holiday party is another huge event that we have, and a lot of folks come out for this, and Deborah does a good job taking pictures. As Jacob pointed out, sometimes Deborah can catch you when you're not quite ready, or maybe mid-bite or something. And so sometimes, as you'll see in this picture here, it helps to be the guy who's making the slideshow, and you just crop yourself right out. So lots of good pictures, good pictures of various families, and always enjoy this. And the kids with Landon singing some, and a table of goodies there at the bottom right that Mark and Deborah put out. And then I tell you what, man, this old Rhett is. I had to share that, honey. I was aggravating Rhett about that, and he was a good sport and posed for Blake and Honey, and so we got a good meme out of that. And I love Kendall's little Nero's Pizza shirt there. Love that as well. Diego visited. He visited once in February, and then again December 9th through 11th before he went back to Costa Rica. I found a way to make a GIF image from the little video I made of Diego saying, "Are you kidding me?" So if you want a copy of that, just a small love offering. No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke. But I will never forget Diego and how he would say, "Are you kidding me?" And there we both are saying in that other picture. And the love seat in my office, man, that was his spot. And it was like a drug in the fabric of that love seat. If he sat down on that, he was going to fall asleep. We would come over here sometimes we would get up and be in the office 8:30, 9 o'clock. He sits down on that love seat, he's falling asleep. At one point, Landon sent me a text. He's like, "Is Diego okay?" Like he is sawing logs in there. And I'm like, "It's just that love seat, bro." So there's his graduation, November 22nd. And then that bottom right, you see a picture of him with the Grinch there. And the bottom right picture is just before we took a little selfie right before he stepped inside the airport to head back to Dallas. And then I think 2 days later went back to Costa Rica where he is now. And he's working there and doing looking forward to hearing good things from him. The caroling the Good Samaritans did here at Sister Becky's house and Brother Leroy's house. This was on December 14th. There they are at the Allens, and Greg and Gail Woody's house. And then this is, bottom left there, these are both Sister Alleen's, if I'm recognizing that right. Is that correct? Yeah. And it's Sister Brenda Cash's house, and I can't see, I'm trying to see. Oh, that's Sister Claire, Jody and Clara's house. And then the last one here where they went and caroled at Gary and Edie's house. So they went to a number of houses in the caroling on December 14th. And then that evening they had the teen Christmas party at Brian and Rachel's house. I love this picture from up high. I don't know who made that picture, but Landon shared that with me, and I think that's a really cool looking picture. They had a number of teens, some college students. They invited the college kids that wanted to come, and of course, many of the parents. Some of the parents went out to that as well, and the Grinch showed up there again. And then our Haralson County Nursing and Rehab, we have the third Sunday service. I've mentioned this several would and this is one of those, would include that under kind of the concern, because I do want to see, and I hope to see more and more involvement from our young folks. And I will say, I think that's gotten better, because I was looking through some of these pictures here, and December 21st was our third Sunday service. We had at least, I feel like I was missing somebody, and I can't figure out who it might be, but at least 20 Bremen people there. So that's good. That means we're getting more, and so that was a good thing. But there's Mary Patricia, we just call her Miss Pat, and Miss Amanda Vaughn, and Miss Sandra. Now, Miss Sandra is sharp. Sometimes some of these folks, their mind may not be as good, but buddy, Miss Sandra she is sharp as a tack, and she will brighten your day like nobody else. And so will David. David Phillips, if you remember Jeanette, Jeanette was in our Commendation and Concern last year to somebody that we said goodbye to. She passed away last year, I want to say October of 24 or something like that. And David was, her and David both not much older than a young child mentally. But they were boyfriend and girlfriend. And they were just cute as a couple. And sometimes she would get on to him. Sometimes they were like an old married couple. Sometimes she'd get upset with him and tell him how it's going to be. But David, I'm telling you, man, if you'll get encouragement from the third Sunday service. If nothing else, you're going to get at some point, you're going to get humor from David. Because sometimes I'll ask a question, and now what does Paul say in that verse? And David will and he'll say, God is not dead. And I say, well, that's right, David. God is not dead. He's very much alive. But what does Paul say in this verse? And so he always comes up with something, and he is precious. Love these people. They make my whole month every time I get to go and spend some time with them for that third Sunday service. And then December 10th, backing up a little bit because there's a few more of our regular residents who come to our third Sunday service. Landon went down there, and they did some pictures. And Landon was good enough to put on his Grinch costume and go down there, and so he did a good thing there. And I love some of these pictures. But you see Mr. Jeff, he's also a very, very bright, encouraging individual. Miss Barbara is sometimes difficult to understand her speech. She has a bit of trouble with her speech, but she's an encouraging person. And you can see there Miss Irene. I think I'm like 90% sure that's Miss Irene. She was not a fan of the Grinch. And there's another picture where once the Grinch got out of the picture, then she smiled and she took her picture. But she didn't like having her picture made with the Grinch. And then Mr. Michael there, and you can see Noah and Paisley and Austin went and helped Landon out with that. And so I appreciate them doing that as well. The youth went to Santa's Village in Oxford, December 22nd. Had a good group that went for that. And then just most recently, they went to EYC in Huntsville, and there was a number of kids and adults that went to that December 27th through the 30th. Okay, so let's close out with a challenge. This is the best I could do, y'all. I will look back at 24 and 25, and I had these little rhyming things, and I don't know, I'm not very good at that kind of stuff, but I was thinking things to mix in 26, and I thought, well, we could work with this, and by that I mean this. Commit to more regular Bible reading. I have several of these Bible in a year plans, or just reading through the Bible. Don't, if it feels overwhelming to say I'm going to read through the Bible entirely in a year, don't necessarily do it in a year. There's no rule that says you have to complete it in a year. If it means getting in the Word every day and you start small, then start small. But just commit to that, more regular Bible reading. And mix that generic more with a goal of 4 days minimum per week. You may recall I mentioned not too long ago a Lifeway study where they talked about people that spent 1 day interacting with the Word, 2 days, 3 days, and the second day, the third day, the study showed just a little incremental bump in benefit. But it was the fourth day, 4 days or more, and there was this astronomical jump in people saying they were stronger against temptation, that they felt closer to God. They were having an easier time doing what they should do. They were having an easier time saying no to the things that they should say no to. It was a huge jump. So mix that generic more with a commitment to 4 days minimum. I'm going to be in the Word. I'm going to interact with the Word of God, and just watch yourself grow as a result of that. I challenge you to do that. And mix all this as an individual with intentional, regular family Bible time. Sometimes we wrestle with, well, what are we going to do for Bible time? I don't know how to go about this, Chad. Man, there is never anything bad about sitting down, even with little children. You could read verses of Scripture and talk about what it means. Get in the book. That's time in the Word of God is never wasted time. It's always time well spent. Branch out. Get out of your comfort zone. This is another challenge I would give to each of us. It was mentioned this morning. Teaching, serving, evangelism, and so on. But mix that with, someone mentioned this to me, talking about the congregation and kind of bouncing ideas around about this lesson. Mix that with working to build on creating, or not creating, but developing and improving your current strengths, your current natural talent. And so there is a sense in which, I want to branch out. I want to get out of my comfort zone, challenge myself, but don't ignore the abilities that you do have. Work on those, continue to develop those. It's not an either-or proposition, it's both and. And so mix those together and do both. And again, watch yourself grow this year. Build relationships with close church friends and families. But also mix that with finding ways to greet or get to know our visitors and or our new members. We sometimes talk about that. Well, let's make sure we get it and let's go meet somebody new. Well, that's true. That's something that's important, especially if it's a new family, a new Christian, that they need to develop relationships. But it's also important to develop those close relationships and build upon the relationships that we do have. And so again, there's that mixture. And then kind of building on recent sermons, be a Paul, be a Barnabas to some Timothy, whether it be a new Christian, a young person, whoever. But mix that with appreciating your own Paul and Barnabas, or Pauls and Barnabas, plural, ones in your life. And be aware of avoiding those negative influences that we talked about as well. And then mix faith and works daily. Because what does James say? Faith without works is dead. Jesus says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? If we're going to seek first God's kingdom, we've got to mix faith with works. And biblically speaking, faith that doesn't do anything is not faith at all. So when the Bible talks about being saved by faith, it's by faith that does what God says, how God says, simply because God says to do it. These are things that we need to mix together in the new year. There are things in our lives that simply must go together. Brother Brinkley would say it's a package deal. There are things spiritually that are a package deal. And faith and works is one of those. And so as we think about the new year and we close out, the challenge would be, let's make sure we're in Christ, because we simply don't know what the future holds. And that James 4:13 and 14 tells us that our life is like a vapor. Sitting at the house Christmas night, got a text from our alumni liaison for the School of Preaching. Pray for Brother Kevin Rutherford. His daughter, Lauren, has had a terrible car accident. She's in the hospital. She's breathing on her own, but it's a pretty serious accident. I remember Lauren, like this tall. When I was in the St. Louis area, Kevin was preaching in that area at West End, I want to say, in St. Louis. Great family. And I was sitting here at the office Friday, the day after Christmas, December 26th. I was working on this slideshow, and I got an email. And I saw who that email was from, and I did not want to open it. But she left this life. I don't think she was even 30 years old yet. Life is so uncertain. And so the number one challenge is let's make sure we're in Christ, so that whatever happens, heaven is our home when this life is over. We stand ready, willing, eager to help you with that. If we can help in any way, let us know. Let us know during the invitation. Let me know afterward. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure we're on the path to heaven together. Will you come? Always stand and sing to encourage you.